What if the reason you feel conflicted is not because you're broken, but because you've been trying to force a choir to sing as one voice? What if the exhaustion, the overthinking, the moments where you say, "Why am I like this?" aren't signs of dysfunction, but signs that different parts of you have been fighting to be heard? And what if healing is not about silencing them, but about finally letting them sit at the same table? Tonight, we're going somewhere most self-help content doesn't go. Not into positivity, not into shadow, not into high vibration, but into something far more honest. You are not one person. You are a system, and the system has been misunderstood. The lie of the single self. From the time we are children, we are taught a subtle idea that we should be consistent, predictable, stable. We are praised for being the same person. We are judged when we aren't. But here's the quiet truth. No human being is a single, unified personality. You can be brave in one moment and terrified in the next, compassionate with a stranger and defensive with someone you love, grounded in the morning and spiraling by night. And instead of seeing this as natural, we turn on ourselves. We say things like, "I thought I healed that. Why am I reacting like this? This isn't who I want to be." But what if it is who you are? Not in the sense of identity, in the sense of structure. In the early 20th century, a psychologist named Roberto Assagioli proposed something radical. He suggested that the human psyche isn't a single voice. It's a constellation, a field of subpersonalities, each one formed for a reason, each one protective in its own way, each one carrying memory, emotion, and intention. He called this framework psychosynthesis. Not psychoanalysis, not pathology, synthesis, integration. The idea wasn't to eliminate parts of you. It was to understand them, coordinate them, and allow a deeper center of awareness to gently guide them. Because according to this model, there is something deeper than your parts, a quiet observing self, not the anxious one, not the angry one, not the wounded child, not the achiever, but the awareness behind them. And when you begin to notice this, something changes. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" And you start asking, "Which part of me is speaking right now?" That question alone can alter the trajectory of a reaction, because suddenly you are not the storm, you are the sky holding it. How the parts are born. No one wakes up one morning and decides to become divided. It happens quietly, gradually, and almost always intelligently. When you were very young, you learned something about the world. Maybe you learned that being loud got you attention, so a bold part formed. Maybe you learned that crying didn't change anything, so a stoic part stepped forward. Maybe you learned that peace depended on keeping everyone else calm, so a hyper-aware scanning part developed. None of these were mistakes. They were adaptations. Psychosynthesis suggests that these subpersonalities form in response to life experiences, not because you are unstable, but because you are responsive. A child who feels unsafe doesn't become broken, they become strategic. A child who feels unseen doesn't become dramatic, they become amplified. A child who feels overwhelmed doesn't become weak, they become vigilant. And the most important thing to understand is this. Each part originally believed it was helping you survive. Even the anxious part, even the controlling part, even the part that pushes people away before they can leave. They were not trying to ruin your life, they were trying to protect it. The problem isn't that the parts exist. The problem is when one of them takes over the whole system. Imagine a boardroom. At the table sit different versions of you. The achiever, the protector, the wounded child, the rebel, the pleaser, the analyst, the one who wants to run, the one who wants to stay. Now imagine one of them grabs the microphone and refuses to let go. That's what reactivity feels like. When trauma occurs, especially repeated trauma, certain parts become louder because they believe the threat is still present. The nervous system doesn't operate on time the way logic does. It operates on pattern. If something feels similar to an old wound, even subtly a protective part activates. And suddenly you're not responding from your present-day self. You're responding from the age the part was formed. That's why you can be calm and articulate 1 minute and feel 5 years old the next. Not because you regressed, but because a younger part stepped forward. And here's where people get confused. They think healing means eliminating that part, silencing it, overriding it with positivity. But psychosynthesis proposes something different. Instead of suppressing the part, you acknowledge it, you separate from it gently. Not dissociation, differentiation. There's a powerful principle within this framework. We are dominated by everything with which our self becomes identified. We can dominate and control everything from which we disidentify. That doesn't mean reject, it means observe. If you say, I am anxious, the anxiety becomes your entire identity in that moment. But if you say, a part of me is feeling anxious, space appears. And in that space, choice begins to return. This is why overthinking often isn't dysfunction, it's negotiation. Different parts arguing over what feels safest. One says, trust. Another says, don't you dare. One says, speak. Another says, stay quiet. And if you've never been taught that this internal dialogue is natural, you assume you're unstable. You're not unstable. You're plural. And that plurality is not weakness. It's complexity. But complexity requires leadership, not domination. Leadership. And this is where the deeper center comes in. Because according to Psychosynthesis, beneath all the subpersonalities, there is an observing self, calm, spacious, uninjured. It does not panic. It does not argue. It does not compete. It simply witnesses. And when you learn to rest there, even briefly, the parts stop screaming for control. Because someone is finally listening. The parts we exile. This is where things get uncomfortable. Because once you understand that you are made of parts, you start to see which ones you've been trying to get rid of. And most of us have been trying to get rid of at least one. The angry part, the needy part, the jealous part, the insecure part, the part that still hurts about something that happened 10 years ago, the part that wants reassurance, the part that wants revenge, the part that wants to give up. In modern culture, especially in self-improvement spaces, there is an unspoken rule. Upgrade yourself, outgrow your triggers, transcend your lower self, stay high vibration. And while growth is beautiful, there is a quiet violence in trying to amputate parts of yourself to appear evolved. Because what happens when you exile a part? It doesn't disappear. It goes underground. And underground parts don't soften. They intensify. They wait. And then they emerge in ways that feel disproportionate. That's the explosion you didn't see coming. That's the shutdown that surprises you. That's the sudden urge to sabotage something good. Not because you are self-destructive, but because something inside you has been ignored for too long. Psychosynthesis speaks about this gently but clearly. Integration is not suppression. It is inclusion with leadership. You do not hand the microphone to every part, but you don't lock them out of the room either. There's a difference between saying, you don't control me, and saying, you don't exist. The first is sovereignty. The second is fragmentation. And this is where spiritual bypassing often hides. It tells you to meditate away your anger, to affirm away your fear, to manifest away your grief. But if a part of you is angry, there was a boundary crossed somewhere. If a part of you is afraid, something once felt unsafe. If a part of you is grieving, something mattered deeply. These parts are not obstacles to your growth. They are records of your experience. When you try to delete them in the name of becoming better, you create internal war, and internal war feels like chronic tension, like constant self-judgment, like the pressure to be composed even when you're unraveling. But imagine something different. Imagine turning toward the part you dislike most, not to indulge it, not to obey it, but to understand its origin. You might discover that the clingy part formed when connection felt unstable, that the cold part formed when vulnerability was punished, that the perfectionist part formed when mistakes carried consequences. Suddenly, what looked like flaws begin to look like strategies. Outdated strategies perhaps, but strategies nonetheless. And here is the turning point. When you acknowledge a part instead of shaming it, it relaxes because it no longer has to fight for existence. And this is where real integration begins. Not when you conquer yourself, but when you coordinate yourself. There is a steadiness that comes when the observing center becomes strong enough to hold all the parts, without collapsing into any one of them. You can feel anger without becoming cruelty. You can feel fear without becoming paralysis. You can feel sadness without becoming identity. Because the awareness holding those emotions is wider than the emotions themselves. And that awareness is not fragile. It was never damaged. It has simply been overshadowed. The one who watches. If the parts are the weather, who is the sky? This is the question at the heart of psychosynthesis. Because Roberto Assagioli did not stop at identifying subpersonalities. He asked something more radical. If we can observe our thoughts, if we can notice our emotions, if we can say, a part of me feels this way, then who is the one noticing? It cannot be the anxious part, because you can see the anxiety. It cannot be the angry part, because you can witness the anger. It cannot be the wounded child, because you can feel compassion toward her. there is something behind all of them, a center of awareness. Assagioli called it the I. Simple, almost understated. Not ego, not personality, not role, just the capacity to be conscious. And this is where people often get uncomfortable. Because once you recognize that you are not identical to your parts, you begin to sense that your identity is more spacious than you were taught. Close your eyes for a moment. Think of a recent reaction you had. Notice the emotion. Notice the storyline around it. Notice the physical sensation. Now notice that you are the one noticing. That awareness has no shape, no age, no wound. It simply is. Psychologically, this can be understood as metacognition, the mind observing itself. But experientially, it feels deeper than that. It feels steady, almost untouched. When people describe moments of profound calm, even in chaos, they are often describing a shift into this observing center. It is not detached in a cold way. It is detached in a grounded way. From here, the parts do not disappear, but they lose their urgency. The anxious part can speak, but it doesn't scream. The angry part can signal, but it doesn't dominate. The wounded part can ache, but it doesn't define, because the center is holding them. This is the difference between being lost inside your experience and holding your experience. And here is the subtle power. When you strengthen your relationship with this observing self, you do not become less emotional. You become less fused. There is space between stimulus and response. And in that space, leadership lives. This is why integration is not about becoming perfectly balanced. It's about becoming internally guided. You stop asking which part is right, and you start asking, what does the center see here? Sometimes the center will choose courage, sometimes restraint, sometimes softness, sometimes distance, but it will not choose panic, because panic belongs to parts. The center belongs to presence. And here is something even quieter. When people touch this center deeply enough, they often describe it as feeling larger than their personal history, as if the awareness itself is not confined to a single storyline. Some interpret this spiritually, some psychologically, some neurologically. But regardless of interpretation, the experience is consistent. There is a layer of you that is not fractured, not chaotic, not at war. And when you live from there, even imperfectly, your internal system begins to harmonize. Not because the parts vanish, but because they trust the leadership, and something inside you finally feels safe. Leadership, not war. So what does this look like in real life? Not in theory, not in a therapy room, not in a meditation retreat. On a Tuesday afternoon when someone says something that hits a nerve, when you feel the surge, the tightening in your chest, the heat behind your eyes, the old script loading, this is the moment, not to suppress, not to explode, but to notice, a part of me is reacting. That one sentence changes everything, because instead of collapsing into the reaction, you've created space around it. Now you can ask, what is this part afraid of? What is it protecting? How old does it feel? You don't need to dramatize it. You don't need to analyze it for hours. Just acknowledge it. I see you. Sometimes that's enough. The angry part softens when it feels heard. The anxious part settles when it feels understood. The wounded part steadies when it feels recognized. Integration isn't dramatic. It's repetitive. It's catching yourself mid-pattern. It's pausing before the automatic text message. It's choosing not to let one part hijack the entire system. And here's something important. You don't eliminate your parts as you heal. You refine them. The protector becomes boundary clarity. The achiever becomes discipline without self-punishment. The sensitive part becomes empathy without self-erasure. The rebel becomes authenticity without destruction. Nothing wasted, nothing cut out, just reorganized. That's why this model is called synthesis, because it assumes you are not a problem to fix. You are a system to harmonize. And harmony doesn't mean silence. It means coordination. You will still feel fear. You will still feel anger. You will still feel doubt. But those emotions won't run your life, because something steadier is leading. And here is the quiet relief in all of this. You are not inconsistent. You are layered. You are not unstable. You are multidimensional. You are not broken. You are complex. And complexity requires compassion. When people say, I just want to feel like myself again, what they often mean is, I want the internal war to stop. And that war stops not when you conquer yourself, but when you understand yourself. There will always be parts, but there can be peace between them. And when the center, the observing self, becomes strong enough to lead, you begin to move through life differently. Not rigid, not reactive, not fragmented, but integrated. And integration feels like this. You respond instead of reflex. You speak instead of explode. You step back instead of spiral. Not perfectly, but consciously. You are not one voice. You are a choir. And when the conductor is awake, the music changes. As always, this has been Valkyrie. Thanks for stopping by. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others. Lanterns up, people.